Scripture this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 19, verses 1 through 9. Now when Jesus had finished these sayings, he went away from Galilee and entered the region of Judea beyond the Jordan, and large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. And Pharisees came up to him and tested him by asking, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" He answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'Therefore a man shall leave his mother and leave his father and mother, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate.'" They said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away?" He said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery." This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you very much, Kurt. As you can see, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 19 this morning, second week of a new series that we're doing called Relational Wisdom. So the idea here is we are relational beings, right? Like we are created that. Like if you bring us down to our core, our most fundamental, foundational thing, we are people created for relationship. Even when Jesus asked, what's the most important commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those two things are a relationship. Love God, love others. This is the core of who we want to be as the Vine Church, loving Jesus and those he created. We want to love God and love our fellow human being. We are relational beings built for relationship. And so what we're trying to do in this is realize if we are that, and understand that relationship is that core to humanity, it is the thing that will bring us probably some of the greatest joys in life and some of the greatest hurts and difficulties in life. And as all of us have engaged different relationships, we've engaged all of that probably. We've engaged our highest of highs with certain relationships and some of our lowest of lows with relationships. And even if relationships are good, like I was expressing last week, like recently losing my father and mother, they could be good and still like change and create pain in a different way. So these are essential and important, and we need wisdom for navigating the relationships that we have. I want to just say, just for a minute, I felt a decent amount of anxiety or stress connected to this relationship. I've told you before, I always tend to be a bit of a person on high anxiety stress levels, but this one maybe more so than others, especially today. And I think the reason, that last week when I was studying a bit, I got a little bit of an insight of probably why. It's not all the reasons why this series has given me a bit of stress, but one of the reasons, and probably one of the reasons that's kept me from doing it. Like I've had this on my list. In my office, I have like a list of future sermon series. This has been on a list for years. And I haven't done it. And there's been always kind of like, yeah, I should, but not yet. Yeah, I should, but not yet. And I don't know, maybe I'm trying to say it's God kicking it down the road, but probably just my anxiety of saying, I don't want to do that. And one of them today, like I realized I've used the material that I'm presenting in this series for 15 years. I have taught this stuff over and over and over again. But I've always taught it in the context of pastoral relationship, not a teaching sermon format. And meaning like I've done many different pre-marriage counseling settings with a lot of this material, and I've done a lot of marriage counseling, post, struggles and relational struggles. I've used this material a lot, but it's always been in that. And the reason I think like it's a struggle to not do that for me is I understand that relationships are heavy. Some of the heaviest things that we go through is the stuff that happens in relationship. And I'm just trying to say to you, I want to be able to do this with you like person to person, not necessarily just this format. And so the reason probably by saying that a bit is I want you to know that as I'm presenting this, if there is more that you need to talk to, please see me. See Pastor Zane, see one of your elders, see a friend, someone that you can know that can give you some biblical wisdom in this idea and walk you through this. See those people, because I don't want this just to be material we send out, but understand that this is like core to who we are. Where do we get the wisdom necessary to engage the beautiful highs of relationship and the difficult lows that are found in relationship? And today, I've said this before in this series, last week, that this is going to be geared more towards marriage this week. But I think there's much for anyone, whatever the relational circumstances you have, that can glean off of this, as well as others are going to be more generic that we go through, and the marriage couple can glean off of that. And so I think there's something in here for all of us as we go through it, as we look at the Bible for its wisdom that it can give us regarding relationship. And I'm not saying instruction. It's not the idea of like, well, I have this problem in a relationship. God, just give me the clear thing to do here. What we need is not just clear instruction, but we need wisdom. We need a general godly wisdom that as we engage our relationships, God, through His Spirit, through His wisdom, can navigate for us personally the different things that are going on in our relationships. And so last week we spent a good amount of time looking at the fact that there is one primary relationship that sets the agenda and focus and identity for all other relationships, the relationship that you have with your Creator. If that relationship is not healthy, it's hard for any other relationship we have to be healthy. And if we want the other ones to be, this one has to be primary. And it's that idea is you are built primarily for relationship with God, and there is an identity, a fulfillment that happens in that relationship that if you try to put on other relationships will create problems. Another person is not supposed to complete you. A child, a spouse, a friend, those are not, like, only God can get our identity and fulfillment in. These other ones are like part of His creation to be enjoyed and stewarded and loved and all of that, but not to find our identity. If we're trying to find our identity in those other relationships, we will put a pressure on those relationships that those people will crush under, or we will set up an expectation that they will never be able to meet, and we will always be left wanting in those relationships. God is the only one that can fulfill us, and the other ones need to be put in their proper place. But in there, how do we navigate those human relationships that we have? And today, I want to look at the core component of human relationship, or relationship in general, even our relationship with God, is commitment and trust. The core of any relationship you have. It's going to be found here more in the marriage context, but if it's a friend, if it's a mother or a child or a sibling or whatever else, the core of all of those relationships is some form of commitment that you have to that person and the trust that you're building with that person. That is the core of every human relationship. And we'll see it in the teaching that Jesus has here today. So let's just start jumping into it and see, with that in mind, the idea of commitment and trust as the core of relationship, what Jesus has to say here. Verse 1 of chapter 19 of Matthew, it says, "Now when Jesus had finished these sayings, he went away from Galilee and entered the region of Judea beyond the Jordan, and large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. One of the Pharisees came up to him to test him and asked him, 'Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?'" Okay, so a bit of the lay of the land. Jesus is doing his teaching ministry. He's moving from Galilee to Judea. Galilee is up north where the Sea of Galilee is. He's working his way south into Judea. Judea is where Jerusalem, where the capital is, and he's working his way down that direction. He's gathering a crowd. It says here that a large crowd followed him, and he's healing them. So he's teaching and healing. A large crowd is gathering as he's working his way back closer to Jerusalem. It says Pharisees came up to meet him. So multiple Pharisees. Essentially, a Pharisee in a Jewish context is like a boots on the ground pastor. Like they have Sadducees, Pharisees as other types of religious offices in the Jewish faith, but the Pharisee is more like the pastor on the ground, the one that gets to know the people know him. This is like the everyday pastor in the Jewish faith. And so these Pharisees are coming from Jerusalem, most likely, coming up north to see him. And it says that they came up to test him, to tempt or trap him. Essentially what's going on is Jesus is building too much of a following. Too many people are knowing about him, too many people are following. The religious establishment is bothered by this, and they want to put a stop to this. They've got a good thing going. They have control and power, or not really good thing, but like in their eyes, they have a good thing going. They're losing some of their power and ability. Jesus is pulling people away, making them think differently than what they're teaching them, and so they want to put a stop to Jesus. They're trying to test him. So the way to test Jesus in this scenario is they're bringing Jesus into the ongoing debate about divorce and reasons for divorce. So the idea here is if I can trap Jesus and get him to like pick a side in this debate, then maybe half the people will like him, but the other half the people will hate him. So they're just trying to find a way to get Jesus to say something, to trip himself up, to say something that's going to upset the people and pull the people away from him. But they ask him the question. This is an ongoing debate that's happening in Jesus' day. And he says, is it lawful or is it permitted to divorce one's wife for any cause? Now, it might seem like, why am I picking this passage to talk about commitment and trust? And I think specifically what you see in those two aspects of this question, divorce and reasons for divorce, it shows these are built off of both trust and commitment. The idea of divorce is to separate or leave or end a covenant commitment. So this understands that there is a commitment that these people are in, and they're answering the question of what might break the trust necessary to end that. What reasons are okay to show that this commitment has been broken, the trust has been broken? The idea is, I think that like any relationship that we have, there's a component of both of these things. There's a component of a commitment level. There's a component of trust involved in it. And trust, I've talked about this before, like trust is a really tricky thing, is it not? Like the idea of being a trustworthy person that someone else can trust, to being with another person who is trustworthy. Just because they are trustworthy doesn't mean I will trust. I might still struggle to trust because of a myriad of other different reasons of why I struggle to trust. Trust is a really hard thing, is it not? But so core to genuine, real relationship with another human being. If there is a lack of trust, there is a difficulty to have true genuineness, depth of that relationship. I've talked about this before, right? Like we have in our area what's known as the Seattle freeze, right? Like, and it's the only people that say that are the people that move here from somewhere else. The Seattleites, like, oh, that's normal. Like, that's good. It should be that way. I don't know why you're talking about that it's a freeze. It's the people from outside that are saying we should change. But the reality is, like, yeah, we might be a little less friendly than other areas of the country. I grew up in this area, 20 years in this area. I didn't realize that we were an unfriendly bunch until I moved to the Midwest and then realized, oh, they're overly friendly. Like, too friendly. Like, stop waving at me when we're just driving down the road. I'm not looking at you. I didn't know I was supposed to look at you. It was weird. Like, I actually was like, I met someone at church and they're like, I saw you and you didn't wave at me. I'm like, I was supposed to? I didn't know I was supposed to look at the people that are driving by me. I think they're just like just fuzzy things off in the distance that you don't even think that they're like, it's just a different thing in certain areas. And I've said before, everyone has their reasons why this, and the Seattle freeze doesn't mean that people aren't friendly. People are friendly, but to an extent. It's the idea like, I'll be friendly and kind, but don't ask anything personal. Don't try to, we don't want to go into depth. And I think the reason being, this is my take on it, is that I think we struggle to trust. And I think we struggle to trust for legitimate reasons that we struggle to trust. I'm just know myself growing up in this area, like I've been around a lot of hard, hurtful things in my life. A lot of pain that was caused to me as a kid in multiple different ways. And each one of those things probably built in you can't trust people. You can't people aren't always good. People aren't always seeking your best interest. Like there's a bit of there's just something there that keeps you. This one might be legit, right? My son got in a car accident a week or two ago, or a month ago maybe, and we went out and bought a new car last week, and we bought it at one of those shady 99 dealerships, and I'm highly untrusting. Just know as I'm walking in, and you're all like, you should be, right? Yeah, we're all prepped for that. I'm hoping that we're going to get a title in the mail. I'm hoping that this thing goes through. I'm still in the back of my brain, so just pray for that. I'm hoping that this thing's all going to flush itself out in a way because I don't trust people. It's bad for me to say that. I'm just trying to, enough hurt has happened that it's hard to trust people. But also knowing that trust is essential for depth of relationship. And so it's understanding what level of commitment do I need to have with somebody else, and how can I be trusting a trustworthy person, and how can I express or give trust to that person? How can I grow to trust somebody else? These are key things for a relationship. I understand even in the commitment level, there's different commitment level for different relationships. There shouldn't be the same, like you don't owe everybody everything. Like there's a certain commitment that you have with certain people in different things. And what the question at large here is, there is a committed relationship that has some kind of brokenness connected to it. And the question is, how much brokenness is enough? How much pain or lack of trust is necessary to end the commitment that's there? That's the question that's in front of Jesus at this point. And I would say, like, let's do a little bit of a test case just to see, like, how even commitment and trust is essential even in our relationship with our Creator. Let me jump to a couple passages here to describe this. It's not just something with other humans, but also with God. Jeremiah 31 through 34 says, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, with the house of Judah. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord." So what God's saying is, this is like 700 years prior to the birth of Jesus. God's saying, there's coming a day in the future where I'm going to make a new covenant with my people, a new committed relationship with my people. One different than the covenant or commitment I made with them in Egypt when I brought them out of Egypt. And the reason why there was a problem in that covenant or that commitment and relationship is because they kept breaking it, even though I was their husband, is what he says. He uses this terminology of a marriage relationship. There was a deep commitment and covenant together, but for that to take place, two parties need to play here. Right? You can say I'm entering into committed relationship, but if only one of them is committed and the other one's not, there's going to be problems, right? And what God's saying here is I entered into this covenant relationship with the nation of Israel, and they kept breaking it over and over and over again. I need a new one with them, is what he says. I need a new relationship with them. And so here's where he says that new one's going to be. "For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each to his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sins no more." So God's saying, I had this covenant relationship with my people and they kept breaking it. I'm going to make a new covenant with them. And that new covenant with them is going to be fully on God. It's going to be fully up to the response. God is going to forgive their constant breaking of it. And God is going to put his spirit and put my laws within them. I'm going to write it on their heart. I'm going to change them from the core is what I'm going to do, as God says. I'm going to have intimate relationship with them. I'm going to change them from the core. I'm going to forgive their sins. I'm going to do all the work necessary for this covenant to take place. That's the beauty of this relationship that we have with God. Jesus says similar words in Luke 22 while he's taking the Last Supper with his disciples. He said he took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And likewise, he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This cup is poured out for you. This cup poured out for you is the new covenant of my blood." The idea here is when we take communion, he's telling us to remember the fact that he's giving his life for us, but also to remember that God has made a new covenant with you, a new commitment with you. The relationship you have with God is based off of a covenant, committed relationship. And God is the one that's done everything to make that covenant and relationship take place. And Jesus is saying, take this and remember, this is the new covenant that God made with you. The author of Hebrews says similar words in chapter 9. He says, verse 11, "But when Christ appeared as the high priest from the good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent not made with hands, that is not of this creation, he entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by the means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. Therefore he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called," skip to verse 15, "a mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, since a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions committed under the first covenant." So the idea here is you have a one-time sacrifice, a once and for all, he enters into the holy places, he gives his own blood to secure an eternal redemption, he gives us a new covenant, one that It says here that the death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions committed under the first. The idea here is, all this together. Your relationship with your Creator is built off of a covenant, built off of a commitment. And you and I, similar to the children of Israel, have broken that covenant over and over and over again. And God says, through Jesus, I'm going to establish a new covenant where all of it is paid for in Jesus, and God fulfills everything from that side. It is a covenant-committed relationship in which we can trust our Creator. He can't necessarily trust us, but He's doing everything necessary for that trusted, committing relationship to take place. I just want us to see through all of that, to see the depth of importance when it comes to this idea of commitment and trust. And Jesus enters into the conversation to say, at what level is this thing that is a deep commitment? At what level can we just say that it's broken and it is beyond repair, or the trust is not there anymore? And when can we end this is the question that Jesus has asked. And it says here, Jesus answers this question. He says, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And he said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. So the debate in Jesus' day is, when is it okay or not okay to end this committed relationship? What are the signs? What are the reasons for ending this committed relationship? And Jesus says, okay, we need to go back to the beginning to get an answer to this question. And remember that you were created by God, and the creation of God creates, He sets in motion human relationships. Now, we have a lot to play in those, but God sets a parameter, a motion for those human relationships. And from the very beginning, God set up this relationship, is what He says. So He says, those who created from the beginning, He said He made them male and female. And that a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a beautiful, in-depth description, understanding of God's design in marriage. It's interesting if you go, let me go a little bit, keep our thoughts there. Go back to this actual account in Genesis. Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, it says, then the Lord said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make for him a helper fit for him. Now out of the ground the Lord had formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. But whatever the man called every living creature, that was his name. The man gave name to all livestock and to the birds of the heaven, to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper fit for him. It's kind of a weird story, right? The idea here is God makes Adam, he's in the garden, he's naming the animals. God's bringing them before him, he's naming the animal. Whatever he names the animal, that's the name of the animal. And it says that none of them were fit for him as a helper. Well, yeah. What? Hello, why is he looking there? Okay, well, whatever it is, he sees them all and realizes, I'm alone. There's no one for me. It was just a weird thing, right? Because last week I'm making this claim to say God is the foundational only relationship that you have. He has a relationship with God, and yet he's still alone. So there's something there to the idea that, yes, we are made for our Creator, but there's also something that we need other human relationship. We need more than just God. We need other human relationship. And he's saying, of all the creatures in the world, none of them were going to give him what he needs in this other human relationship. And so it says in verse 21, so the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon man, and while he slept, he took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh, and the rib that the Lord God had taken from man he made into a woman, and brought her to man, and then man said, this at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. So the idea here is a sleep is put on Adam, a rib is taken out. From that rib, God creates. It seems weird as well, right? But he made dust to make Adam to begin with. God does weird things. God does cool, weird, creative things. And he takes from this rib and makes Eve. And from there, Adam breaks into poetry and song. This is what happens. This is poetry. This at last, woohoo, he's happy. This at last is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. He is doing poetry. He is singing a song. It's clear that it's not the athletes that get the girl, it's the artist that gets the girl. Bad joke, I don't know. Let's move on from that. The idea here, though, is he busts into song, And then right forward, that God gives the instruction, the same thing that we saw Jesus teach on. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So what Jesus is saying is, you're having the debate when to end this covenant relationship. What are the reasons necessary? And Jesus is saying, let's go back to the beginning and see what God designed. And the beginning of God's design was a man leaving father and mother and holding fast to his wife. There's a change in relationship that's happening for this man. It's interesting, the idea that he's establishing kind of a covenant relationship with a new person, and in doing so, he's changing another covenant relationship that he has, right? He has a certain amount of commitment to his parents that he is now leaving and going into a new committed relationship. It's interesting, at least from that, to point out that relationships change. Commitments that we have with other human beings change. It's okay and good for them to change from time to time. Sometimes, the mother or father that holds on too dearly to the kid and doesn't let them go to the next one, it's hard for them to really become the next thing that they have. That there is a season, there's a commitment, there's always a commitment level to a parent to honor your mother and father, but there's a different commitment level that you'll have between ages 0 and whatever, 25, 30, how old are we now getting married? I was too young probably when we did it. No one's getting married at 22 anymore like I did. Whatever that age is, the commitment level changes. There's a different level that changes now that you're moving into a different relationship. And to be able to pour into this new committed relationship, I can't have the same level of commitment to this other one. Right? Just think about that in general with your relationships. You can't have the same level of commitment in all of your relationships. You have to be able to prioritize and understand which ones are a higher level of commitment and which ones are a lesser level of commitment, and be able to make some understanding, some wisdom decisions in those areas. He says here that he will leave father and mother and hold fast to his wife. The idea of holding fast is this idea of clinging, of becoming a part of. It's similar to the word he just says after that the two shall become one flesh. This is a total different, I believe, totally different understanding of a marriage relationship than most of what our world believes in a marriage relationship. God's design, as described in Genesis and reinforced by Jesus in Matthew 19, was for the two individuals to become one something together. To not just be two individuals, but to form a new identity together. It's not abandoning old identities. It's becoming something new together. I think about this my wife and I have been married for almost 25 years, 25 this June, so we're coming up on the 25th anniversary. There's been a lot of Brandon and Stephanie becoming Breffany? Strand? No, none of them are going to work. I'm a nerd. Okay, sorry. The idea, though, is I was a whole certain person before I ever met her. And my good and my bad and my uniquenesses and all that I am, I'm still that. And she was a whole person herself before meeting me. And when you put those two people together, there's times where those two people clash. I was raised this way. I was raised this way. I like this. I like this. I think we should do this. No, I think we should do this. And these things clash together. Now, if we're going to stay two separate people, we're just going to keep clashing for years and years and years and years until we're sick of clashing with each other all the time. The reality is we have to find, who are we? I might be this over here. I might be this over here. But who are we in this area? I was raised this way. I was raised this way. How are we going to raise our kids? I believe this, I believe this. What do we believe? I think we should do this, I think we should do this. What should we do? The idea is two becoming one flesh. This is not an overnight thing. This doesn't happen overnight. This happens after year and years and years and years of humbling yourself, learning from the other person, loving the other person, giving to the other person as the other person gives to you and loves you and cares for you. And two people that are actually giving of themselves to love one another can create something together. Some of my struggles of pastoring for 25 years, meeting a lot of different people, talking through marital struggles that are there. And I think oftentimes you find that there hasn't been two becoming one flesh for many years. There's been two separate people living two separate lives for a long time, but there's not two becoming one often. It's the core of what Jesus is saying relationship should be. Two becoming one flesh. The trust necessary for that to take place. The vulnerability necessary for that to take place. Here's what God says back in our Genesis account. It says, they will hold fast to his wife, the two shall become one flesh, and man and his wife were both naked and not ashamed. It says in Genesis 2:25 there. Husband and wife, man and woman, were naked and unashamed. That's a weird line, right? You ever just read that? Like when I was a young person and read that, I'm like, just skip over that. Doesn't make any sense. That is weird. Just move on. You get that sometimes in the Bible. Just weird, move on, right? The idea here, what I think is at play here, I think they are physically naked, but to be physically naked and unashamed, I don't even like talking about this, right? Like, if I was, I'm not going to be, but if I was right now, I'd be very ashamed. I'd be fair, like, there's a certain things I don't want you seeing, like, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't kept up the greatest shape, I'm not 18, like, it's hard to be naked and unashamed. If I'm naked, I'm going to feel shameful, vulnerable, like, so he is talking on a physical sense, but much more than a physical sense. Imagine a relationship where you can be completely exposed, not just physically, like who you are, like completely exposed, completely known, completely vulnerable, and not have to feel any shame. None of us have ever had a relationship with that, like that, have we? Imagine what that would be like if you could have a relationship where you could be fully who you are, fully known, and fully loved. This is the relationship that's happening in the Garden of Eden as two become one flesh. They're fully known by one another and fully vulnerable in front of one another and fully loved by one another. It's not long after that in Genesis 3, it says that they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What's the first thing they do after that? It says their eyes were both opened and they knew that they were naked and they sewed fig leaves together and made for themselves loincloths. I need to be covered. I need to protect. I need to hide. I can't be vulnerable anymore. What I was saying before about the Seattle freeze or my interpretation of that or my experience living in a sinful, painful world is like you learn quick, you can't be vulnerable. You can't let yourself fully be out there, fully be known, because not everyone's got good intentions with that. People are going to take advantage of that. People are going to hurt you. Right? Like you learn those things that you probably shouldn't have to learn. What a thought to be fully known, fully vulnerable, and yet fully loved. Sin ruins that. Like this is why the core of every relationship is trust, but it is the hardest thing to build. So hard. It's not just because of that relationship. It might be because of a bunch of other relationships that make it hard for that to take place. Because what a sinful world has told me is protect, Brandon. Protect me. Don't be vulnerable to people. But at the core of a truly deep, abiding relationship is commitment and trust of one another. So Jesus, while the question of the day is, well, what reasons can we get, like, there's got to be some things that just show it's broken and it's a mess and we got to move on. We got to change this commitment. And Jesus is saying we need to go back to the beginning. What we need is what God designed, two people giving of themselves, loving and serving one another, and two becoming one flesh together. Jesus says after that whole thing, what God has joined together, let not man separate. The idea that there is a God-given divine aspect of the union of the connection of these people together, and he's saying essentially, don't be quick to separate that thing. Be committed. Have a committed relationship. Seek to be one with this other person, and at all costs, try to make this thing work, is the point he's saying. They challenge back, as they tend to do with Jesus. verse 7. They said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and send her away?" He said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed for you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so." So they're referencing back and saying, hey, Old Testament law gives us the ability to do this. If you go back and read it, we won't spend time today, go back and read Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4. This is the instruction by Moses to the children of Israel. You want to get a divorce, just give a certificate of divorce and you can get a divorce. This is what it sounds like, if you want to jump into it. And so they're making the debate. Like, Moses said we can do it for whatever reason we want to. And you're now telling us from the beginning that it was not so? Why are you saying something different than what Moses is saying? And what Jesus is saying is he's pointing back to the beginning is the intent. Why did he allow Deuteronomy 24? Because of your hardness of heart. Because in a sinful world, people do harm and hurt one another. And sometimes there's a brokenness connected to it that the commitment changes. And he's saying, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be fighting for Genesis 2. We should be fighting for Genesis 2. But understand in a broken, sinful world, sometimes Deuteronomy 24 is necessary. And he says, Jesus will even give you an example of that. Verse 9. He says, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual morality and marries another commits adultery. Jesus gives a reason. So if they're saying to him, hey, what reasons? And Jesus is saying, let's not worry about the reasons to start with. Let's go back to the original intent of this committed, trusting relationship. And therefore, as he describes all this trusting relationship at the end, he says, but yeah, sometimes the hardness of heart and sin, it's still broken. And specifically, he says here, except for sexual immorality. He gives an exception. He's essentially saying, two together forever, work it out, two become one flesh, except for this area. Now, this is always the debate. I won't spend a ton of time here, but this is the debate. Does Jesus give one exception, or is he giving one example of multiple exceptions that could be there? This is the debate of the church. You guys can have that debate if you want. What I would say is, I find myself more on that this is a one example of multiple possibilities. And I would say, based off the fact that in 1 Corinthians 7, Paul uses a different reason when he's talking to the church at Corinth, when he says to the church at Corinth that if you're unequally yoked and the person who's not a Christian wants to get divorced, you should go get divorced. The question I would have is if Jesus is giving only one reason and there's no other exceptions, why is Paul giving another exception? Other than the fact that there should be fighting for the commitment of this relationship. There should be two becoming one flesh, but in a hard-hearted, sinful, broken world, sometimes it's too much to where there cannot be trust anymore at the core of that relationship, and the commitment has to change. And what Jesus is saying specifically here, he gives you one example for that. And I'd say example or exception, you have your debate. I'm just sharing you my thoughts on it. The reason I think this one, why is he saying sexual morality? I think the reason is because it's the physical outworking of what he just said about the core of what marriage is. The marriage is two becoming one flesh, naked and unashamed, vulnerable and unashamed. And I think the act of sexuality, God's design in sexuality, is to have a physical connection of two becoming one flesh. It's the place where you are actually naked and unashamed, vulnerable and building something with another human being. I don't want to go too much in depth and all that, but I think you get my understanding of what I'm saying. And when that area is broken, it's hard for any other areas of that to not be as well, I think. He doesn't explain it. I'm just giving you my thoughts on why I think this one that he throws out. The core of this relationship is trust and a commitment. But the reality is, in a sinful, broken world, people harm and hurt one another and make the commitment hard and difficult and sometimes impossible. And the point that I want to say in all of this, I'm not trying to give us a treaty on divorce or whatever else. What I'm trying to do in using this text is I want us to see that at the core of human relationships is commitment and trust. That there's a different level of commitment that we need to have in our different relationships. My relationship with my wife is a different commitment level than I will have with every other different than any other relationship. I will have a commitment level to my kids than I will to anyone else in this church. I will have a different commitment level to extended family, brothers, and whatever else. And I will have a level of commitment that I have to you as a church. I will have a level of commitment that I have to my friends. But they're different, but I have commitment to those things. And for me to engage those relationships, I need to trust. I need to trust them. And let's just say, I don't trust well. I'm going to be on stage letting you know I'm not a trusting person. And I'm trying to say that in hopes that you can just be free to say it if you need to say it too. And I don't think I'm wrong in that, and I think there's a lot of reasons why I'm not. And there's a lot, if I told you my whole life story and everything that's happened, like you'd understand, why are you a trusting person at all? People are hard to trust. But people are also good and easy to trust too sometimes. And some relationships that I've had with some that make it hard for me to trust someone else that I really should trust because they're really good and have been beneficial to me. It's a hard thing, isn't it? To have a commitment level with someone else, I have to be able to trust that person. They have to be able to trust me. And in general, I need to learn how to trust, even if it has nothing to do with them. At the core of our relationships is the idea of trust. That's what builds commitment. The longer you're in a trusting relationship with another person, the deeper that commitment will be. You ever find that about trust and commitment too? That the longer you're in it, the deeper it gets. And the heart is difficult to build over a long period of time. But also trust is one of those things that's broken quick. It could take a long time to build it. And it could just take a few moments to destroy a lot of it. And then you're on the decision of, do I keep building this again? Do I try to build this again? And that's where we're going to get to next week, is the idea of what do you do when there's brokenness in our trust, brokenness in our commitment. And I'll just lay it out for you a bit. God's answer for that is repentance, forgiveness, grace, and building trust again. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes the commitment needs to change, and that person may not need to have a level of commitment in your life anymore. I can't decide, though. That's why I'm saying we need wisdom, not a clear answer to everything that you got going on in your life. But from there, understanding, can we get to a point where we can be a trusting person, where we can grow in our relationship with the Lord and walk in the fruit of the Spirit enough to where we become more of a trusting person and engage a relationship with someone else who is trusting as well. And at least in this relationship that we see in marriage, that we can pursue a changing of other relationships and two becoming one. And understanding that not just the marriage relationship, but every other one that you have, at its core, if it's going to have a chance for health, there has to be a commitment and there has to be trust. Those are necessary for any healthy relationship that we have in life. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, I thank you for your word today. And Lord, as I shared earlier, Lord, I don't understand and know how this falls on all the ears and hearts in this room. And Lord, I'd much rather have a pastoral conversation with people about this stuff than just share it in this way. But Lord, I also know that your Spirit is the great counselor, that your Spirit is taking the words of Jesus, the words that we are talking about today, and helping and working on your people. Lord, I pray for the best of our abilities, the best as we can as sinful, broken humans, that we can be a trusting people as we pursue relationship with you, that you can change us over time, and through that, give us the ability to be a trustworthy person. Lord, I pray as well that you'd open up our ability to trust others as they are growing to be trustworthy people. Lord, give us wisdom to know when that's not happening and the relationship needs to change and there needs to be a completely different form of commitment or no commitment at all to that person, Lord. Lord, you and your Spirit can give us wisdom for the specific scenarios in our life. So, Lord, I pray that you would open us up to trust where we can. Lord, I pray as well that you'd help us to have the proper, trusted, committing relationships that we need to have, and just give us wisdom to how to navigate all the specific ones that we're involved in. Lord, help myself, help others like me that struggle to trust. Lord, I just pray that you'd help us to grow in trusting you. And as we trust you, we can open up to trusting others a bit more even if it's difficult, and that doesn't mean it's not without boundaries and whatever else, Lord, but just, Lord, help us in all these things. So, Lord, I just know that your Spirit's big enough to do it, so just do that in your church today. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. By in church, I encourage you to come and take communion today. As you take communion, remember, this is the covenant that God made with you. Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me, and as you take the blood, this is the new covenant in my blood, is what he said. God established a covenant with you. We kept breaking it, and he did one in which he forgives our sins and restores complete relationship with us. May this be the relationship that we have here with God through Jesus Christ, the foundational relationship that gives us the ability to engage other relationships in our lives, and using the wisdom of the scriptures to do so. So come and take communion, remember this foundational relationship, and let the Spirit of God speak to you in whatever way he needs to work through whatever other relationships you have. I encourage you to do that right now. Pray with him, come and take communion, and then we'll sing some songs together.